So n8n just released native MCP nodes. In this video, I'm going to tell you everything you need to know about this new update. Now, before you get too excited, it is not the exact same as the MCP nodes that are currently available on the self-hosted version. But I'm going to talk about quite a lot in this video. So here's a list. I'll have the timestamps down below so you can kind of skip around and figure out which parts you want to listen to. But I'm first going to talk about what it actually means to have them natively available on n8n. Then I'm going to talk about what MCPs actually are, how you can get access to the new MCP nodes, what has actually been added, and then what it means for both now and some future possibilities that might occur later down the road. Now, I did say natively. You've probably seen that MCPs have actually been available on n8n for a while now, but not natively. Now, what this means is that n8n actually has two different versions. So one is a self-hosted version, so you are basically running a version of n8n locally on your computer or hosted on another platform. Now, this allows you to actually add what are called community nodes. So community nodes are made by the community, but that means they are not actually made by n8n. So it is kind of up to you to determine the safety, I guess, of the community nodes. Pretty much all of them I've heard of are safe to use, but it's just n8n is not liable for the community nodes. But that does allow us to use some pretty cool nodes like MCPs. Now, there's another version, which is the main version of n8n, which is run by n8n. That is called the Claude version. Now, MCPs previously have not been available on the Claude version until now. Now, this is not the exact same as the community nodes, which I'll talk about a little bit later, but they are now available on the Claude version. Now we can talk about what MCPs actually are. So MCP stands for Model Context Protocol, and that kind of sounds a little complicated. So what this is saying is that AI models can use different tools. However, each tool usually has its own unique way for the AI model to actually use that tool. And previously, when we've set up workflows inside of n8n, I've been walking you through the process of setting up and connecting these different tools. Now, what MCP does is it basically standardizes that process into one single protocol that it will take to connect the large language models to those tools. So it's kind of a one-stop shop as far as connecting different tools to AI. Now, there's actually three different parts of MCPs. So the first part is the MCP host, which is the AI model or the large language model that is calling those tools. We then have an MCP client, which its job is just to connect the large language model or the AI to the server, and the server contains the tools. So this will make more sense in just a minute. I'll give you an example of what this actually looks like inside of n8n right now. So just to give you a quick example, this is what the different MCP nodes actually look like. So on the left side here, we can see an MCP server, which is a trigger. And what this allows us to do is we can add different tools, kind of like we could before with agents, but we can add them to an MCP server, and then we can call that server to access the tools that are attached here. So then as a tool, we can add an MCP client, which, just to give you a reminder, it connects the host, which in this case is the model here, or the agent. This connects the host to this server over here, which gives us access to the tools that are attached there. Now, for now, this seems kind of pointless because you might as well just add these tools to this agent, but I'm going to explain the differences between just adding the tools directly to the agent, and then it will also I'll also cover something a little bit later, and that will kind of make more sense as to why you might want to use this server instead of just an agent. So that is what has actually been added, and I'll cover a little bit of that later. But now to actually go over how you can get access to this server and the tool here, the client. So inside of n8n, you are probably familiar with the overview page of your n8n account. If you're not, just create an account and you'll be brought to your overview page here. And from this overview page, we're actually going to go click on this little cloud icon to go to the admin panel. So once we've clicked on that admin panel, it'll open up our dashboard. And you can see my workspace right there. So we're going to click on this little settings icon and it'll open up our workspace settings. Now we're going to scroll down and you can see the n8n version here. So I personally hadn't updated mine in a while, so I needed to anyways, but you can see it gives us this drop down with at least 2 different versions. So right now the latest beta is 1.88. So this version will give us access to the MCP nodes. That's the latest stable version is 1.86.1. So I wouldn't recommend doing anything production related on this beta because it is still in the beta stage, but this does give us access to the MCP nodes. So select this version and then I believe it'll just like quickly restart your workspace. It doesn't mess anything up, but that'll update the version there, and then we can go inside of our workspace or our editor here and actually get access to these MCP nodes. So I'll show you what that looks like. We just type MCP and you can see the server is in the form of a trigger because that is what we are actually calling, and I'll show you how to set that up in just a second. And then we have a tool here as well, and that gives us access to that server by connecting it in this client or the tool here. So that is how you get access to the nodes inside of n8n. And now I can walk you through setting this up and what this actually looks like to use these MCP nodes. So we'll start with this server. So if we open this up, you can see we get the test URL and a production URL, just like if we were using a webhook. And this is going to be kind of a similar process. So I'll click out of this for now and we can just add a couple of tools. So here I've added a calculator and then a Gmail tool to send an email. So just as an example, I've hard coded in my email here to send it to, but you can define the subject by the model, and what that looks like is the message here. Inside of this beta we get this little model here. I think that was in the previous versions as well. I just hadn't updated mine yet, but we can just click on this and it will just let the model define the message for us, which is very cool, very helpful. So it defines the subject and the message, and then I just hard coded in the email I want it to actually send to, just for our example. And then I set a description here to send an email. So I'm not going to add too many other tools just to keep it simple. But then what we can do is we can copy this production URL. So you just click on it and it will copy it to your clipboard. And then what we can do is open up, I'll just add another one as an example. So I'll add a tool to this agent. I'll just type MCP and we can add an MCP tool. So then what we can do is we can add an SAC endpoint right here. So I'm going to paste in that URL here, and that allows us to reference and use all of these tools on this server through this tool or the client right here. So you might be wondering, why don't we just connect the tools directly to this agent? And what this allows us to do is we can basically just add these tools one time and then reference this server whenever we need access to those tools. So let's say we wanted to manage our email inbox. So previously I had made an agent to manage our emails, and you can see I've added 6 different tools here, a part of this agent that it can then call and use. What we can do is we can add all of those tools to a server and then just give this agent access to an MCP client tool here, and it can then call that server and use all of those tools instead of manually adding them here every single time we need them for an agent. Now you might say, why don't we just connect this agent and allow it to be called by another workflow? And you can do that by just selecting when executed by another workflow. It's then going to call that agent, which has access to all those tools. So what I'm saying here is that we could have one agent that we are actually talking to, And I've made workflows like this before where we have a bunch of tools set up and these tools are calling another workflow. So let's say this agent does or manages our to-do list, manages our email, and a bunch of other things as well. So what we can do is we can set up a workflow that looks like this, and it's an agent that has access to all of the tools to manage our email. So this other agent can use a tool to call this agent to execute tasks regarding our email. So we would say if there's any task related to our email, I want you to call this email tool, and then what that does is calls the other workflow which manages our email here. Now what is happening here is every single time this agent makes a call to a tool, it is using the AI model here. So we are using the AI model here to determine which workflow to call. Then once we've determined that we want to call the email workflow here, we then need to use this AI model to determine the different tools inside of our emails, or which email tool we need to call. So maybe we want to get an email, then we want to reply to it, send it, whatever. So there might be multiple tool calls in here. And so this model is going to get called 2 or 3, 4 times. And we're getting charged every single time that model is called because it's charging our API. So what this allows us to do is we can connect all of those email tools to an MCP server and then connect that server to this agent up here through this MCP client here. And then every single time we want to execute emails, anything regarding our email, we just pass it to this MCP client, and that saves us from calling this agent, which is using all of our API credits through this model. So I think that right now is the main use case, just because we don't have access to the community nodes. So the community nodes currently allow us to do what I've done here. So this is a workflow or an agent to manage my email. So like I mentioned before, I have the 6 different tools. Now inside the self-hosted version, we can have this. So this does the exact same thing with only 2 tools. So you just connect your MCP client here to your Gmail account, and then you can have just 2 tools. So one just lists all the tools available, and then one executes a tool. So we can just use these 2, go back and forth, and determine which tools using this, and then execute any tools here. Now currently we don't have access to this inside of the native MCPs because the native MCPs are using SSE, and all of these self-hosted, so the community nodes, are using npx. So you can see that on this GitHub page that gives us a list of all the MCP servers that we have to connect to using the self-hosted version of n8n. So I'll show you what that looks like. So if we open up like a Google Maps server here, so again, this allows us to just list out the tools like this, and then you can execute the tools using another tool. And you can see that we are using npx to actually connect to those instead of SSE. So I'm not entirely sure the difference between those and what that exactly means. It's just we can't exactly do what we've been doing inside of the self-hosted version inside of the native version quite yet. Now there is another thing that we can actually do that is very cool in my opinion, is we can connect the MCP servers into things or other hosts. So we can have, maybe you use the cursor IDE and you can connect this server to the host, which will be cursor, or you can do that inside of Claude using Claude Desktop. So I'll open up Claude and show you exactly what we're doing to connect that. So I'm going to turn this workflow to active first. So if I open up Claude here, how we can do this is you're on your home page here, and we're going to go up to the top and go to this help section, and we're going to enable developer mode. So we're going to click enable, and that will close out of it and reopen it, I believe. So you can see that it's now enabled because we don't get that option anymore. So now what we can do, once we've enabled the developer mode, we're going to go up to Claude and then go down to settings. So this is what the settings looks like. And we now have this developer tab here. The next thing we need to do is select edit config. And that will open up our Claude folder here and highlights the Claude desktop config. Now what we can do is we're going to open up this file here. So I'll just open it in a text editor. And then we're going to paste in something. So I'll link this down below. So I'm going to paste this in here. And then what we can do is we can actually add the n8n webhook URL. So if we go back into n8n, we can get access to this server URL again. So we're going to do the production URL. I'm just going to click to copy that. And then we're going to paste that in here. Going to save that. And then we can close out of it. Now if we go back into Claude, we have to first quit the application. So I'm going to close out of it, make sure it's quits all the way. We're going to open it back up again. So you can see if I open my settings again, we go to developer, you can see n8n here. You can see it's actively running, and then this took a minute to show up, but you can see we get this little tool icon here. If we click on this, we get the available MCP tools. So we get a calculator tool. So we can actually use our tools inside of Claude. So you can see it can actually use that calculator tool. Now, we could add different tools as well. So I could add a Gmail tool. We'll click save here. Now we can go back over to Claude, and we might have to quit this. Let me see here. So as of now, we have the calculator and the Gmail tool. So we'll see if it updates. So not yet. Let's quit out of Claude and open it back up again and see if it's updated. Okay, so you can see it has actually updated. So it shows a tool, a 2 here. So we get the calculator, and then we get the Gmail tool here. So you could actually change the tool description. So I'll show you what I'm talking about here. So inside of this tool, you have set automatically, and then you have set manually. So you can see the description now is just consume the Gmail API. And you can see it just says that right here. So we could change this to send an email, just to give it a little bit more of a description for what it's actually doing. So I'm just going to click save right here, and then we can close out of it and reopen Claude, so it gets that updated tool description for us. So you can see we have 2 tools here, and you can see it now says send an email. So now inside of Claude, I can say so then you can see it pops up with this allow tool to run, basically, I guess. And since I've just added it, we'll say allow for this chat. So you can see then it tells us our email has been sent. So now I can go over to my email inbox, and you can see we get that email sent to us. We can access any tools that we like inside of Claude, inside of Cursor, things like that. So pretty cool. So I think that pretty much covers it all. We talked about what happens, what it means for now. So now there's not too much of a difference. It can be better in some cases, just preventing some API calls. from different models here. It just gives it access to the MCP server here, and you can also connect it to other hosts as well, like Claude and Cursor. What it means for the future. So eventually we might see servers that we can actually access, like the self-hosted version. So we might be able to access other things like these different servers and just make it really easy where we don't have to go and create all the tools manually. We can just get access to a server that's already been created for us. Plug in our, maybe we need an API key, but we can plug in an API key and get access to all the tools that server offers instead of manually creating them ourselves, which is pretty much what we do now with the agent tools here anyways. So that's might be what it looks like in the future. Who knows, but we'll see. And then yeah, that's pretty much it. I showed you the difference between self-hosted and native, described a little bit about what MCPs actually are, showed you how to update your version so you can get access to them inside of the beta of n8n, and then showed you exactly what has been added. We have that server here and then the client right here as the agent tool, and then talked about what it means for now and some future things that might come out of this later down the line. So hopefully this video has been helpful. If you have any questions, drop a comment below, and if you did find this helpful, leave a like and subscribe. And yeah, that's all I have for you today. Have a good one.